Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Emilie Davis joining us here once again, the founder and lead nutritionist at Whole Essentials Nutrition from beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah, and snowy Salt Lake City, Utah. She joins us live today. Really, you have snow?
Really, we have snow.
Oh my
I know.
goodness.
Snow in May.
Oh my goodness. I just wouldn't think, but great to have you here. Please tell us a little bit
Thank
about your company and
you.
what it is you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So, I am a holistic nutritionist that specializes in gut health. And people can find me on my website and find more information about my signature gut restore program, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about today. But that is what I do.
Yay. And how do we find you?
WholeEssentialsNutrition.com. And once you get there, that's my website. There'll be a link to schedule a free 15-minute discovery call if you'd like to discuss your personal kind of story and or questions about whether or not my program is a good fit for you. But yeah, that's probably the best way to connect with me is to schedule that call.
All right, will do. And wholeessentialsnutrition.com. All right, so what's on tap for us today? What did you have in mind?
Yeah, I have talked in the past about some of my clients and how gut health relates to them because I think that's the easiest way to help people understand. And so I've got a couple other stories today that
We
I thought
love
I'd
to
share.
hear client stories. Yes, go for it.
So this one's kind of interesting. One of my most recent clients, we got her we got her stool test back a couple of days ago, and for those that are new to me or listening, maybe for the first time, part of what I do is a comprehensive stool test in my program. So everybody gets the stool test. It's where we start. It's you know I think the best way for me to know what's really going on, and it helps guide my recommendations and our treatment. So her symptoms when she came to me were bloating, some acne, um, pretty severe fatigue, and then in her words, she's sick all the time. So I think some of those things people might think, oh yeah, like, maybe look at your gut, the bloating potentially. But all of those things together is what kind of tells that story. And last episode, I believe I talked about my gut health quiz. And if you're interested in knowing the health of your gut and how it's affecting your health, go to my website and take that quiz because one of the things we talked about is immune function. So that story of like being sick all the time, that's actually very related to gut health. And so we did a stool test. And it's interesting to me what came back. Couple of things, which I'll hopefully describe in simple terms. When her stool test came back, her quote unquote good bacteria was so low and essentially like almost missing. And when I saw that, I asked her, have you been on an antibiotic recently? And she said no. But I mean, it looked like she'd been not on one antibiotic, but like four. I almost never see someone's good bacteria come back this low, like really concerning. And that might not mean anything to most people, but that is like a really big reason why someone might be sick all the time. Because 80 to 90% of our immune cells are produced in our gut. And so that is one of the effects or symptoms of um, an unhealthy gut, meaning that like your immune system is not working properly and hers is not. So really, really low levels of commensals, that's something that we can, absolutely do something about. And we never would have found that. I don't think anyone else would have like thought to look at her gut, um, other than a gut health practitioner. And then leaky gut. She's got leaky gut. And so really those two things combined, and there were a couple of other things, but like those significantly for her are what is, I think, connected to the immune function, her bloating and fatigue. And so once we address those, she will feel a lot better. So yeah, that's one example, and I share it because, like I say, I don't think people really think of that as being related to gut health.
And it's funny because I've been seeing an immunologist for a long time now about me always being sick. And it's funny, I don't know why regular medical doctors don't test for this stuff, right? They do the blood work. They're not
They do the
doing
blood
the stool
work.
test to tell you,
Hmm.
yeah, it's fascinating. They don't do all this. Why?
No,
Why?
I it's a great question. I mean, I think we're moving in a direction where hopefully in medical schools, conventional medical schools are going to start looking more at the gut. I hope, because really the information and the research we're learning, and we're always learning. I think it's kind of a new field, is just how much the gut is related to really everything, including our immune system. So yeah, I mean, it's just that they're not trained. That's the simple answer, but yeah, it's so important. It really is. And I'll say too, like I tried to drive this point home with my client as I was explaining like what we found and the significance of it. This kind of stuff takes time. This is not a quick fix, even though like we know what the problem is, we're going to address it. And it's more than just taking a probiotic, by the way. And we can talk about that. But like, she's not going to like get her way out of this by just taking a probiotic. It's a kind of a multifaceted like treatment that needs to happen to actually be able to bring her good bacteria back up. And it's going to take like 6 to 9 months. It just takes time. So, for anyone out there, I guess thinking, like that a probiotic or a digestive enzyme or I don't know what's popular right now, like a greens powder. Like I don't, there's always something. But if someone's really struggling with
Mm-hmm.
gut health, it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
So know that
Oh,
to do
well,
it right, I should say.
that's why you got to come to you.
Yes, yes.
And every time, every client she's ever had who does the stool test, tell me, has there ever been
It's
a negative result? Like nothing's wrong?
no, nope,
That is
never,
baffling to me.
never.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so even on myself, right? And I'm pretty in tune, obviously. But anytime something for me that is like not resolving, it's the first thing I think of. I mean, I know what I know, so I'm always thinking like, has something shifted in my gut? And sure
Mm-hmm.
enough, every time I test, there's a reason why.
Interesting,
So
right? See, so
yeah.
how often do you test, by the way? That's another quick question. How often should you be testing?
Yeah, it's a great question because I see this as, let's say people, not everyone does this, but like thinking of like an annual checkup with your doctor, maybe you do some like blood work, right? I
Mm-hmm.
see it in the same way. And I do have clients that have just learned, right, to do this on
Mm-hmm.
kind of like an annual basis. Um, Even if, all things are going well, they do it, yeah, more or less on an annual basis, just to make sure things are optimal. Because it can, I mean, it changes daily, just like our blood work can too, right? It's a moment in time. Um, and so, yeah, I even as like preventative, I would say like annual, more or less, just kind of what I do.
All
Yeah.
right, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Oh, because yeah, things change in your body all the time. It's like, you mentioned probiotics before, but is there something that we could be eating every day that's really going to help our gut? Or, you hear the word probiotics, you hear about yogurt, but is that good for everyone or is it not? How do you know what's good for your body? Ah,
Good question. I know. Good question. Yeah, I mean, yogurt can have probiotics. Not all yogurts are created equal. And so I kind of Um, I hesitate to recommend that, just because so much of the yogurt that we have here in the US, you think of like that wall of yogurt in the grocery store. 90% of those options are not good. And some of them don't even have a probiotic. So, if I'm recommending yogurt, it's potentially homemade. Like that's really the best way to do it. It has so much higher levels of the bacteria than what you buy at the store. But yeah, you're just thinking high quality. Plain, unsweetened Greek yogurts are going to be the best. Even like sheep and goat are even going to be better tolerated by people. Because that's the other consideration is if someone's lactose intolerant, then like yogurt's not a good option. So to answer your other, part of the question is, yeah, I like yogurt is not for everyone. Fermented veggies are, though, I think.
What are
Not again, like
fermented
not,
veggies like pickles, like
yeah,
cucumbers? Like what? I like pickles, but the
kimchi.
sodium's so high. What's a
Kimchi is a fermented vegetable. Sauerkraut. Some pickles are fermented, but not all. If they're
Oh,
shelf stable, meaning you get them like not in the refrigerated section, then they're not
okay.
fermented. Yeah, it's a good clarification. So yeah, kimchi, sauerkraut, you can find other fermented veggies besides those. But like in my refrigerator, I have probably like 5 or 6 varieties, and I eat them uh, almost on a daily basis. So that is something I'd recommend. Fermented veggies are going to be better than things like, people ask me about kombucha. Yes, kombucha has probiotics, but not much. Also, not everyone like does well with the kombucha, but fermented veggies, it might be an acquired taste, but they really like are pretty good for everyone. So learn to like them.
Never tried. I'm gonna have to. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Yeah, so I do think they're kind of an acquired taste, but so good for us. Yeah, and then other things that are fermented are miso, um, tempeh, and there are a couple others, but those are kind of the big ones. So yeah, it's a great question. And me being, a nutritionist first and foremost, I'm always thinking about and recommending, the foods that we can change in our diet that are going to help with gut health versus like a supplement, which I think is best.
I agree. Remind us how we could reach out to you at this time. We're halfway through. Oh, yeah.
Perfect. So please find me on my website, wholeessentialsnutrition.com, and there will be a link to book a free 15-minute discovery call with me.
Awesome. And by the way, you are based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, but you're working with people all over the world, right?
All over. I am, as a matter of fact.
Good.
Yeah, my degree, so I have a master's degree in nutrition, and it allows me to work pretty much everywhere.
I love that. All right, good to know. And what else with your work would you say makes, you stand out? Because other people in the field might say, "Oh, well, I know someone who does what you offer, I know the Signature Gut Restore program." Just want to
Yeah,
pump you up because you do a lot and it's all to help others.
thank you. I think, and what I have found makes me unique is part of that, excuse me, combination of being a nutritionist and a gut health practitioner.
Okay.
So a lot of times, I'll get potential clients reaching out who may be working with someone that let's say they have SIBO and they're working with
Yeah.
a naturopathic doctor to treat that. And what's often missing is that dietary component. And a lot of times, not just with SIBO, but so like other digestive issues like IBS, Crohn's, diverticulitis, some of the more like, I guess, severe kind of digestive,
Hmm.
issues and diseases. Again, like even if someone's working with like a GI specialist, I often find that nutrition and even this sort of like deep-rooted gut health information that we get from this comprehensive stool test, it's missing. And
Hmm.
that's a big piece why people are not getting better, or they just uh, keep getting, in the example of SIBO, keep getting SIBO. It's because there are other things that aren't being addressed. You're not going to find this kind of information from a scope.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, like some practitioners, even if they're using a comprehensive stool test, they might
Yep.
not know how to address everything. So I think that's what makes me different.
Oh, well, we like you, and you're always so kind and so helpful. So, all right, all right.
Well,
We still have more time on the clock here, obviously, and we're going to dive in more to all that you're doing. By the way, I know we just reintroduced our whole Essentials Nutrition. It's Emily Davis is her name, the founder and lead nutritionist. So make sure you Google her name and go to wholeessentialsnutrition.com. And what else about gut health did you want to talk about today?
yeah, I've got another story that I
Oh,
think is kind of interesting. Um, this client has recently been diagnosed with celiac.
hmm.
So I think most people know what that is, but in case someone's listening that doesn't, that is an autoimmune disease where our immune system is attacking the gluten that's found in wheat. And so that's when someone really needs to pay attention to being gluten free. Uh, that's where it's not just like a fad, right, or a preference, but have to stay away from that as it's an autoimmune disease. So there's a couple of different ways someone can test for that. And a lot of times, I would say like the only real information or treatment that's given is like just stay away from gluten,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. So this particular client, he'd been diagnosed, was gluten free for several months, I think, by the time he got to me. And he reached out because he was having these really bad flares, even though he was gluten free. So for
Yeah.
him, those flares looked like
Ugh.
his skin, like so all over his face and upper body was breaking out in kind of what looked like a hive. Really fatigued. Anyway, like, and it kind of came and went. So it would flare for maybe a couple of days to a week, and then it would resolve, and then it would flare, etc. It couldn't figure out what was happening. Came to me to, do a little bit more investigative work with
Hmm.
a stool test. And we found that several things in his gut are likely still triggering his immune system. So things like um, we found candida, which is a yeast, and we all have candida in our system. It's the overgrowth that's a problem. So he had actually really high levels of candida that can trigger the immune system. That's inflammatory all on its own. He had a couple of bacteria that also very inflammatory, overgrown. So there was kind of this like picture of like overgrowth is how we describe it. That was, yeah, inflammatory and triggering his immune system. Um, he also had leaky gut, also had some digestive problems. And so, again, like that information, so his doctor had recommended he get a scope.
Okay.
And luckily he does know me. He knows enough about gut health and the connection to reach out. He knew, that the scope wasn't going to give him any information. And I agree with that actually in this case. So again, like the information we found from the stool test, like you're not going to find that from a scope.
Mm-hmm.
They're not looking for it. They're not testing for it. But we found all of those things um, and more. We found other things I didn't even mention, but already by starting to clear out the overgrowth that I mentioned, he's already
Mm-hmm.
feeling better. Hasn't had a flare. I think it's been 3, maybe 4 weeks. So
what are some of the signs of candida? Do you mind just sharing that?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's a good question because it's a hard one because it can be all over the board. I would say though, classically, a candida overgrowth presents with like skin issues.
okay,
So I've seen for myself that was acne. I had a candida overgrowth, and yeah, it presented itself with acne. I have worked with clients where it presented with more like it was eczema. This client, it was more, I don't even know if there's really a term for it, but like rosacea, maybe even potentially dermatitis. Like, so skin, it classically presents on the skin. Rash, dryness, even if like we're not, we can't differentiate what it is exactly. Anything on the skin could potentially be linked to candida or bacteria in the gut. It can also present with like digestive issues. Like when I had a candida overgrowth, I had that 9 month pregnant look that my
yeah.
clients had described to me. I finally experienced it for myself. So sometimes candida can present with bloating, like excessive bloating. I'm trying to think of some of the other fatigue and joint pain, even like it has a really wide range of potential symptoms. So it is a little bit tricky that way. But like I say, a lot of the time, the thing that makes me think about it for some of my clients is the skin issues.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, yeah, good question. And even for this client, I don't think he had made the connection. I just knew these symptoms that he was having, like absolutely rooted in the gut. So, yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, this was a good example. Again, I think of, the doctors that he was working with, like no, no one was thinking gut health. Um, well, that's not true, right? They
Mm-hmm.
recommended a scope, but I think in their mind, so a scope is looking for some of those like more severe kind of things. Like, I mean, they're ruling out cancer and they're ruling out things like Crohn's and diverticulitis, so like high levels of inflammation, polyps, right? Those sorts of things, but they're not looking at any of the things that this test does. So really
And
interesting for him.
well, yeah, how quickly does it work? I mean, like, you do your consultation, you send the test. I mean, how long does it take to get the results back after you give the sample?
Yeah, it takes about 10 business days to
Okay.
get a report back. Yeah, so within, I'd say like 3 total weeks of someone beginning the program to when we could potentially have those results. And then they're meeting with me to review them, and I have my individualized protocol and treatment plan for them. And yeah, then we get started.
Got it.
So yeah, good question.
Good, good,
And so
good.
I think, like this, he's a good example of, I would, say for people who have an autoimmune disease and it's not being managed well, like that's when I really think about checking the gut. Yeah, there's again, like always something I find, always a reason why someone might not be feeling as well as they could, right? With an autoimmune disease, to be clear, there are no cures. Uh, but depending on what someone has and what else is going on, we can manage it, and some people can manage it really, really well with addressing all of these other things, including nutrition.
Got it.
So.
Hmm. Well, thank you. And how did you want to end off for today?
Well, I would love to talk to anyone that hears themselves in any of these stories, that might be looking to address their health and, resolve any symptoms naturally, as well as what I consider like a root cause approach, right? I'm always thinking of the why. I really want to help people get better, but also like for good. So not relying on um, medications, even supplements. So if anyone out there is hearing themselves in these stories and is looking for that type of approach, I would love to hear from you. Go to my website, wholeessentialsnutrition.com, and I'd love to get on a phone call with you. So book a discovery call with me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And how can we call you?
801 513 3522.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, looking forward to the
Thank
next time we get to
you.
connect, and good luck with the snow.
Oh my gosh.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Appreciate it.
And stay warm. Bye bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.